This is You're Probably Right. Entertainment first, everything else is just bonus. Opinions, all ours, sometimes backed by research, but never the final word. There are always exceptions, so take it with a grain of salt and a slight dusting of chili powder.
That's the fight and the fright, we're searching for truth.
Yeah.
The quiet answer stays inside.
Come on.
You are probably right, it cuts, but it heals, it stings, but it feels.
That's right.
You are probably right, I'm born to the cure, the pain and the show. From blind into ignite, we're finding the way. From biting to inside, where shadows give way.
You are probably
You are
right.
part of the light.
Yeah. What's up, y'all? This is MCM, and you're listening to You're Probably Right. I'm so happy you're here. This is gonna be a long one. Now, generally, I would actually cut this in half, but I'm not going to today. Sit with me, get a cup of coffee. Got mine right here. I was actually going to eat at the same time, but I know that'll probably tick somebody off. If you go back into my earlier episodes, there's probably one specific episode. I think it was, what was it? Don't podcast while chewing gum. Some nonsense. Anyhow, I'm happy you're here. Today's episode is called Why Empaths Keep Loving Avoidance and How to Finally Let Go. And I'm not saying necessarily you have to let go. Maybe it's your husband, maybe it's your wife, and you're in it for the long haul. You signed that agreement, that contract that you are going to be married till death do you part. Well, I strongly suggest you do your best and give everything you have to that relationship, that marriage. For you who are not married, and maybe the situation is strained and you're having all kinds of issues, or you're on again, off again, or whatever the situation is, and you're not married, so you just, I'm not going to tell anybody to pop and fizzle anything, right? But the bottom line is I'm here for you. I'm not trying to vilify anybody. I'm not trying to make anybody sound bad. I put a lot into this one, so hopefully this will help. Like popping in this thing. I'm gonna get right into it. I was gonna tell you what I guess I could tell you what you will understand by the end of this. How empaths nervous system bonds through hope instead of reality. Why avoidants retreat. I'm telling you, man, my reading is mess sometimes. Why avoidants retreat? It's like when my brain is like half reading and half kind of just in a daze or something. It's really strange. I've dealt with this since I was a little kid. Anyhow, why avoidants retreat right when connection feels close. How to separate chemistry from compatibility. The difference between intensity and intimacy. Oh, good. That's going to be really fun saying that every time. What emotional sobriety actually looks like, and how to build genuine, secure attachment without losing your warmth. Anyhow, hopefully you're going to learn a lot from this one. I really, really went over it and tried to get it. I don't like there's a lot of stuff on the internet, on YouTube, probably on Spotify as well, where everybody just seems to be regurgitating the same information. The difference with this podcast and this particular episode, which of course is for entertainment purposes only, I've went through some of this stuff. So it's kind of like listening to somebody's best album. Maybe it's a rapper, maybe it's a singer, whatever it is, rock star, R&B star, hip hop star. And you'll find that their best work is when they were tortured, sad, didn't know what to do. It's funny, I was listening to, lately I've been listening to a lot of Scott. She's a Swedish artist, and I just like her stuff. And the reason why I said the reason why I listened to that was because of, what was it? It was not Nigel Benn. Anyway, Nigel Benn's son and Eubanks Jr. had a fight. And at the beginning of the fight, actually the ring walk for Eubanks Jr. was this song that just came on when the father and the son were standing there, and they go through their songs or whatever it is like that, and this song came on and it was just so amazing. And I don't know about you, but if you're a person who can probably go through the years of your life through music and probably tell people how you were feeling when a specific song came out, or maybe a specific song that you were listening to for 1 year, for a long time, or for months, and you're just stuck on that song. Anyway, Overcome was kind of that song for me. And apparently, the story behind it as to why they used it for the ring walk was because the father, Eubank Sr., heard the song. I think apparently it was a TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, so I don't know, but apparently they were just using the instrumental. So anyway, that's where that. So maybe you want to check it out. It's called Overcome by Scott, and that's Skott. Anyhow, and then I started listening to all of other stuff, and there's some wild. Apparently, she's like, I would say she's an A artist, but maybe she has like a B, or like some sort of a cult following or something like that. But she's definitely, I would say, like a good artist to definitely you should like listen to, because I don't know, I think she's just an amazing artist, and I think that she just really knows how to put music together, I would say, is the best way I can put it anyway. So check it out. Anyhow, here we go. You ever meet someone who seems to wake up your whole nervous system? Not through chaos, but through familiarity. Like your soul recognizes them even before your mind has time to reason it out. And yet, over time, you start realizing that what it felt like, safety, what felt like connection, starts turning into confusion, silence, and distance. That's what happens when an empath crosses paths with an avoidant. Now, I don't think I'll be really explaining the two, but you can get an easy definition on wherever. It's everywhere, attachment styles. And I've probably talked about it in previous episodes, but because this one is so long, I'm not going to go through it. And I probably could have just explained what they are instead of that little soliloquy. Anyway, anyhow. And no, this isn't a diagnosis. It's a pattern, a reoccurring, invisible, emotional rhythm that two people can fall into without even realizing it. One gives, the other retreats. One feels deeply, the other suppresses. One needs closeness to feel calm, the other needs distance to breathe. And the tragedy is that both are trying to love, but they're playing on two different emotional frequencies. For the empath, the connection feels spiritual, magnetic, rare. They want to help. They want to understand. They want to give of themselves. They want to give anything that they have. They want to love the avoidant through their pain, thinking maybe if I'm patient enough, gentle enough, steady enough, they'll finally trust me. And if you're an empath, you've probably found out that that's been very, 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 very difficult to do for an avoidant. But the avoidant, whether they realize it or not, doesn't live inside that same emotional system. They're not interpreting love through closeness. They interpret love through control of their own space. They feel safest when no one has too much power over their emotions, even if that means sabotaging real intimacy to keep balance in their favor. See, for empaths, love means we. For an avoidant, love means me, safely, beside you. I don't want to be engulfed. I don't want you to take over my life. I need my autonomy. And that difference alone is enough to slowly dismantle an otherwise incredible bond. Because you both feel it. They both feel it. But they're pulling in opposite directions, which is really sad. And it's like you meet in the middle at the beginning, and then you start going in two different directions. And you try to claw your way back sometimes, from one end anyway. If you've ever been with someone avoidant, you know this pattern too well. They're warm, then cold, engaged, then distracted. They tell you things like, I don't want to hurt you, right before they do. Or, I'm just going through a lot right now, right before they ghost you for a week. And when you confront them, they'll act confused, like your pain is an overreaction to such a small thing. But it's not small. Because when an empath loves, they love through immersion, emotionally, physically, mentally. And that last one is really, really difficult. And you imagine your emotions, imagine your actual physical body, but mentally, that can take you and throw you for a crazy loop. You might throw yourself into financial struggle trying to help an avoidant. I'm sure some of you have. And you're here right now listening to me trying to figure out how to straighten your life back out. And I know that's real. Listen, they start seeing that person in everything. Their routine adapts. Their inner peace depends on stability. And so when that connection suddenly becomes unpredictable, it shakes their entire sense of safety. Now here's the brutal irony. Avoidants are often drawn to empaths, not because they want to hurt them, but because they want to feel loved in a way that seems unconditional. And empaths are really good at that. Empaths make them feel safe enough to open up. But as soon as the safety gets too real, the avoidance system panics. They start to feel trapped, obligated, or exposed. And then comes the pullback. They don't even always do it consciously. They might start working longer hours, spending more time with random friends or old friends, creating tension over small things, or suddenly losing eye contact, like they're hiding something or running from something inside of themselves. And for the empath, that pullback feels personal. It feels like rejection. It's almost dizzying. And I can say for some, probably actually dizzying. It feels like, what did I do wrong? I've given all that I could give. I've given beyond what I should have given. As a matter of fact, I probably shouldn't have given a lot that I've given. And in some circumstances, people might look at it as love bombing when it wasn't. It was just I was giving out of my heart. But at the same time, I had no business doing what I did. It's not always what you decide to do. It's the effect on the person when you do it and what you do to them. But the truth is not about what you did. It's about what they can handle. And that's the thing, they can't handle it. Many avoidants, you've given and you've given and you've given, and some feel embarrassed for receiving all kinds of things from you. Giving your time, giving your love. Maybe you've bought them things, tried to fix things, do things. Avoidants can't stay where they feel emotionally overpowered. They'll tell you they want closeness, but the second they get it, they push it away, then punish themselves later for losing it. Meanwhile, the empaths who runs on connection keeps trying to fix it. If it was myself, like it has been in the past, I would call myself an idiot probably. Not calling you an idiot. I'm just saying myself when I look back on the mistakes that I've made. Not realizing they're feeding the same loop. It's just destroying them. You can spend months, even years trying to decode them. You start thinking, maybe if I just love them better. Not louder, but smarter. Maybe they'll finally see I'm not here to hurt them. Maybe they'll finally 100% choose me. But avoidance doesn't need proof. It needs control. And the moment you hand over your emotional peace to someone who's undecided about whether they even want to stay, you've already lost yourself. That's the silent heartbreak of empaths. They're not broken because the avoidant rejected them. They're broken because they betrayed themselves, trying to be chosen by someone who can't stay. They're chasing someone who isn't chasing them. They're bleeding for someone who may not even hand them a Band-Aid. And I'm not saying in reality, I'm sure the average person will hand you a Band-Aid, but you understand it's like your lifeblood is being drained out of you. And they can't help you. They're just trying to find autonomy. They're just trying to take control of their life and their emotions. So today, this isn't about blame. It's about awareness. Because once you understand this emotional equation, this pattern of approach and retreat, of giving and withdrawal, you'll start to reclaim your power. You stop making the push-pull for passion. You stop seeing silence as mystery. You stop waiting for someone who already showed their limits. And that's where we begin. And that was a long beginning, guys. Hold on, I just want to see where we are here. My goodness, we're already at 18 minutes or something. Where are we? Yeah, man, just after. Okay. Anyway, I gotta go. Sorry. All right. So check it out. The cycle, attraction trigger, withdrawal repair. Check it out. Let's talk about the cycle, because almost every empath avoidant connection follows one. It starts with magnetism, moves through misalignment, and ends in emotional exhaustion. But if you look close enough, it's always the same story told in different order, or told in a different order. Sorry, let me just finish this coffee here right quick. At first, the attraction feels natural. Yeah, natural. Remember that? Maybe you're not a person who was looking for love on the internet. Maybe you just found it somewhere around you, maybe on your street where you live, maybe in the building where you live, or your workplace, or at the mall that you frequent, or maybe you do an activity or something, or a hobby, right? It just feels like it was natural. The avoidant is drawn to the empath's warmth, their emotional fluency, their steady eyes that say, "You're safe here." And then the empath pulls toward the avoidant's calm, their composure, that subtle air of mystery, that feels grounding in a world full of noise. They mistake their quiet for security, not realizing it's really emotional distance disguised as strength. It starts light, a conversation that feels easy, small touches, shared humor. The avoidant opens up about something painful, an ex who hurt them, a betrayal, a family pressure, and the empath listens deeply. For the avoidant, that kind of listening feels like oxygen. For the empath, that kind of honesty feels like intimacy. So the bond accelerates before either of them have even agreed or know what it is. And this is where the triggers happen. The trigger, yeah. The moment the connection feels too close, too safe, too real, guess what? The avoidance internal alarm goes off. Something deep inside whispers, "You're losing control." That's when they start pulling back. They'll stop answering as quickly, won't text you back as quick, right? They'll shift their tone, more neutral, more practical. They might even find small reasons to criticize or argue, anything to put space back into the equation. They feel like they're being swallowed whole, like maybe Jonah and the whale or something. Because the avoidant doesn't retreat from you, they retreat from their own emotional exposure. They've been exposed. And here's where the empaths begin to panic, of course. The silence feels like rejection. The distant feels like danger. Because empaths read energy. They can feel when something's off, even before it's said. So they start adjusting, they soften, they over-explain, they over-communicate, they give more love to prove they're not a threat. Maybe they'll buy gifts, give presents out of nowhere for no reason. Bend over backwards, entreat. That's right, I said entreat. Look it up. But that generosity, that deep emotional availability is actually the exact thing that overwhelms the avoidance system. So how about that? You're here trying to fix things. You're trying to make things better. You're trying to make things safe. And you're actually making it worse. Through generosity, through emotional availability, totally alien to an empath or an anxious or someone who might be both. They start to see care as pressure, affection as a demand, closeness as a risk. So the more you reach for them, the more they step back. And then you find yourself stuck in the worst kind of loop. The pursue, withdrawal cycle. For the empath, this stage is torture. Torture. That's right, I said it. Torture. You can't understand why the person who once lit up around you now looks through you. You start doubting yourself. Maybe you were too emotional, too intense, too needy, right, avoidance? If you're listening. But no amount of self-correction ever fixes it. Because the issue isn't your intensity, it's their actual capacity for it. Avoidants crave connection, but fear dependence. They can't depend on you. That's why you've probably offered gifts and offered help and they can't take it. They just can't. It feels like they're giving over the keys, their mortgage, their house, their life to you. If they feel like they maybe even owe you something when you're doing things for them because you love them. They love being loved, but they hate feeling responsible for your emotional world. So even though they may still want you, they'll disconnect. That's right. They want you, but they're going to disconnect. Just enough to keep the upper hand. And then they wait. Because eventually the empath breaks. They stop chasing. They pull back to heal. And that's when the avoidant feels safe again. Because the emotional temperature drops. They'll suddenly become warm again, playful, even nostalgic. You'll get a text at 10:45 that says, "Hey, hope you're okay." And there you are again, halfway out the door, halfway reeled back in. Every time I get out, they pull me back in. Right? It's not malicious, though. Most avoidants don't realize they're even doing it. They don't want to lose you, remember? So when they feel that you've pulled away, they gotta claw you back a little bit with some random text message or something. But every re-entry, every just checking in is their way of testing if the door is still open. Not because they're ready for closeness, but because they don't want to lose access. For the empath, though the message reignites hope, you start thinking, maybe this time will be different. But guess what? It won't. And I'm not even being flippant about that, and I know that hurts. Because the truth is, repair never lasts when the same patterns remain unexamined. If they come back the same way they left, then everything is going to happen again. It's like doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. You have to check it at the door. You have to be able to go over what went wrong last time, even if you're in your fourth loop, and realize what things need to change before you can actually expect a different outcome. You'll get moments of warmth, hours of laughter, intimacy, flashes of intimacy that feel like the start of something again, until their system reaches an emotional ceiling again. And then it all resets. Silence, withdrawal, indifference. And here's the catch. The empath starts to normalize the pain. You start telling yourself, that's just how they are. You accept crumbs. That's right, little breadcrumb for you. Not Hansel, a little bit for you, Gretel. Because you've convinced yourself they're better than nothing, than having nothing. You defend them to your friends, of course, if you have any. You make excuses like, they've just been through a lot. And slowly your self-worth starts bending around their avoidance again. This is where emotional exhaustion sets in. You're not even chasing anymore. You're surviving the in-between. You're performing stability while dying inside, literally dying inside, emotionally, mentally. Maybe you can't focus on work. Maybe you can't focus on taking care of things at home. And the avoidant who reads your restraints as calm thinks everything's fine again. It's not, though. You're slowly, as an empath or an anxious, disappearing. Trying to fit yourself into a shoe that's too small or too big. That's the cruel irony of this cycle. The empath keeps shrinking to stay close, while the avoidant keeps distancing to stay safe. And in the end, you both lose. Because the empath becomes resentful and drained, and the avoidant ends up alone, confirming the fear, the very fear that started the cycle in the actual first place. Did you hear that? Because the empath becomes resentful and drained, and the avoidant ends up alone, confirming the fear that started the cycle in the first place. So if you've ever been in that pattern, here's the hardest truth. You can't love someone out of their avoidance. You can only love yourself enough to stop enabling it. Because an avoidant will never feel ready until they feel safe. And it makes sense, right? And they'll never feel safe until they learn to face intimacy without equating it to losing control. That's not your job to fix. You can try to help them, but they have to get there on their own, actually. You can give them the reading materials, the videos to watch if you want. And even that, you got to be careful. Because it'll be like you're judging them. And then it'll be just arguments, right? But it is your job to recognize the signs, to stop mistaking inconsistency for mystery and confusion for chemistry. Because every time you let yourself be pulled back in, you're reinforcing their comfort with keeping you at arm's length. You teach them that your heart will wait, that your boundaries always bend, and that's how the avoidant keeps winning a game they don't even realize that they're playing. The only way to break the cycle isn't confrontation. It's contrast. You stop reacting. Did you hear that? Stop reacting. You stop explaining away everything. You stop waiting. You replace their silence with self-respect and doing stuff for yourself. Going places, being with other people, finding hobbies, doing and keeping those commitments to those hobbies or those clubs or groups, church, whatever it is you do. Because the moment they feel that the absence of your emotional caretaking, they'll finally face their own emptiness. And if they're ever going to change, that's where it starts. Imagine that. You got to leave them alone. Not with your patience, but with your absence. You have to make up in your mind. And you don't need to make a grandiose statement like, you know what? I feel like the way that you are is torturing my life, and now I'm going to step aside or I'm going to step back. Right? It's not an announcement, because once you're still making announcements, you probably haven't made it. If you're probably trying to just convince yourself that that's what you're going to do. But when you really feel it, you're just going to step back. It might go to radio silence straight up because you've had enough. That's the cycle. And it always ends up one of two ways. The empath burns out or wakes up. Next, the empath's mistake, confusing intimacy with healing. Let's talk about the biggest misunderstanding empaths carry. The idea that love can heal someone who doesn't want to be healed. Imagine that, eh? See, most empaths grew up reading the room before they could even read words. They learned early how to anticipate emotions, how to keep the peace, calm the storm, soften the blow. It's not just a skill, it's survival for them. So when they meet someone emotionally guarded, their instinct isn't to run, it's to help. They see the avoidance walls and think, I can reach them. They hear, I'm not ready, and think, I'll be patient. Okay. They feel the silence and think, they just need a little reassurance. They just need to feel safe. And before long, the relationship stops being about love and becomes some sort of a rescue. But here's what most empaths don't realize. When you try to love someone's pain out of them, you stop being a partner and start being a therapist. You become the emotional safety net for someone who never plans to climb on their own. And that's how you start confusing intimacy with healing. When the avoidant opens up even a little, the empath feels a rush of meaning. It's not just about what was said, it's about what it represents. It feels like progress, like trust, like love. But what the empath sees as emotional evolution, the avoidant often sees as temporary relief, a way to self-soothe before pulling back again. You think you're building connection, but you're really building dependency. Because in their world, actually, you become the calm they visit, not the home they build. And the empaths keep investing time, energy, patience, money, because the moment of closeness feels like proof. Just a moment, just little moments, right? Like Will Smith, just the moments in Hitch. Was that the movie? Yeah. You tell yourself, they wouldn't let me this close if they didn't care. But here's the truth. They care in their way, not in your way. They can love you and still withhold themselves. They can miss you and still not move towards you. They can want you and still avoid you. And that's where the empath loses themselves, because they don't understand. In the constant guessing, the constant interpreting, the constant trying to make sense of someone who doesn't even make sense to themselves. That is wild. And I'm just saying that as an empath. It really is. Like, I'm going to read that again. I know I probably shouldn't, but yes. And that's where the empath loses themselves. In the constant guessing, the constant interpreting, the constant trying to make sense of something and someone who doesn't even make sense to themselves. Because to an empath, love is clarity. Love heals all. To an avoidant, love is chaos. You're both reaching for someone, say the same piece, but from opposite ends of the spectrum. The empath keeps offering more, thinking it'll create balance, but the avoidants read that as intensity, pressure, and danger. They start shutting down, emotionally zoning out, acting detached. I got something to do, got places to go, people to see. Not to punish you, though, but to protect themselves from what they perceive as a loss of control. Meanwhile, the empath starts to mistake that detachment for punishment. They start walking on eggshells, managing tone, softening truth, trying not to trigger withdrawal again. And the more you regulate yourself to keep them close, obviously the less of yourself will actually be there in the relationship. And when you decide, or when your natural self kicks in, you might seem like an alien to them, or maybe even to yourself. I don't know why I'm behaving this way. It's because that's who you are. You start losing your spark, the very warmth that attracted them in the first place. You think you're being patient, but really, you're just erasing yourself. Here's the paradox. Avoidants are drawn to empaths because of the warmth, that depth, that safe presence. But once they have it, they start to suffocate under it. They don't want to lose it, but they can't stay close to it either. It's like emotional claustrophobia. So they pull away. And the empath does what empaths do. They wait, they forgive, they hold on. And in doing so, they start to believe that endurance equals love. But that's not love, buddy. That's overfunctioning. That's trauma disguised as devotion. You see, the empaths believe love can fix, but love doesn't fix in this situation this way, not this type of love and not this type of issue. It mirrors, right? Love mirrors. It shows people who they are. It reveals whether they're ready to be seen. And an avoidant who hasn't faced themselves will always see your love as exposure, right? The light turns on, not comfort. They'll see all their misgivings and all the stuff that they're lacking, all the problems. They'll say things like, "You deserve someone better," but they really mean, "You're seeing too much of me." They'll tell you they're not ready, but what that means is, "I can't stand feeling vulnerable." And they'll keep you hanging because losing your validation hurts more than actually losing your love. Strange, right? For some of us, right? And that's what makes the empath's heartbreak so deep. You don't just lose the person, you lose your mission. You built your identity around helping them heal. And when they leave, it feels like failure. It feels like a slap in the face. It feels like you've been left on an island. You feel like maybe you're Tom Hanks in that movie where he's just stranded. I can't remember what the movie was called. He's just by himself in the volleyball. And he calls him Wilson, right? Because it's the Wilson volleyball. You question your worth, your intuition, your capacity to love. But that pain, that collapse, that's actually the beginning of clarity. Did you hear that? Because the truth is, you were never meant to be their cure. You were meant to be their mirror. And when you finally stop trying to repair them, you'll start repairing your actual self. And that's when you realize the version of you that needed to earn love by saving others doesn't need to actually exist anymore. You can still be kind, you can still be warm, you can still be giving without losing yourself in the process. Be yourself. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for what you believe. Healing isn't about becoming less empathetic. It's about learning to direct the empathy inward, to hold space for yourself the way you've always held it for others, to let go of people who mistake your care for control, and to understand that if someone keeps showing you they're unavailable, guess what? The most loving thing you can do for both of you is to stop knocking on that door because it's locked. Because if an avoidant ever truly wakes up, it won't be because you stayed. Yahtzee. It's because you finally left. As sad as that sounds. That's when they'll see what real loss feels like. Not punishment, but consequence. It might not just take a month. It may not take 3 months. It might take a year. It might take 2 years. Sadly. Empaths need to understand leaving isn't betrayal. It's boundary. You matter. It's how you teach love to respect you back. And that's not cold, that's moving forward. The avoidant logic, why they pull away when it's real. All right, let's step into the mind of an avoidant. Not all avoidance, of course, right? There is nuance to all of this, of course. So nothing's exact. because we're all people who've dealt with different things in life, right? Life experiences makes us sometimes an amalgam of many different things. But if it rings true, it rings true, right? Because if you've ever loved one, you already know logic doesn't live where their heart does. They can say they care about you and still pull away when you finally let your guard down. They can crave connection, but guess what? They panic when it arrives. They want closeness, but only if it's on their terms, measured, predictable, and controllable. So, what's really going on? Why do they push away the very thing they say they want? Why is their intimacy and sudden coldness almost cold enough to end the relationship? To understand that, you have to go back, not to your story, but to their story. Most avoidants didn't grow up neglected, at least not in the obvious ways. They had food, they had shelter, maybe even affection. But what they didn't have was emotional safety. They learned early, and possibly through a relationship when they became an adult, that expressing need or vulnerability came with a cost. Maybe their feelings were dismissed. Maybe they were told to be strong. Maybe the people they loved were inconsistent. There, but not there. So the avoidant learned to survive by turning inward. They built walls, they built independence, they built quiet pride around not needing anyone. They became masters of self-soothing, whatever that takes, or whatever that looks like. Shutting down emotions before they become too much. They built their identity around being fine. I'm fine. Maybe they ending love relationships and getting into physical relationships, although they love the person that they love, the one with the emotions and all that stuff, but the other one that they're with, it's just physical. And that's hard for the avoidant, and it's hard for the empath as well, especially when they're on the other side of everything and on the outside of everything. But that's the coping mechanism. That emotional firewall doesn't vanish just because they meet someone loving. If anything, real intimacy actually activates it, because love demands openness. Love demands being actually seen. For an avoidant, being seen feels like exposure, like danger. When an avoidant starts to care about you, their old survival system gets confused. Their brain associates closeness with vulnerability, and vulnerability is pain many times. So instead of leaning in, they have no choice but to retreat, just enough to feel like themselves again. That retreat isn't always about dramatic, or isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, a change in tone, fewer texts, a change in the type of text, of course, shorter conversations. They might even start distracting themselves, working more, talking to friends, filling every gap with noise, anything to avoid feeling dependent. Because dependence to them equals weakness, and weakness equals loss of control. Here's what's wild. Most avoidants don't want to hurt you. They genuinely believe they're protecting both of you from something messy or doomed. They tell themselves stories like, I'm doing them a favor, or they deserve someone who can give them more. But in reality, those are escape routines disguised as self-awareness. It's not clarity. It's avoidance dressed up as maturity. And that's why they can sound so convincing when they say things like, I just don't have time for a relationship, or you're amazing, but I can't give you what you need. What they really mean is, I can't face how much I want this without feeling like I'll lose myself in it. See, love exposes them. It shows them how much they crave what they've spent years pretending not to need. It's challenges. They're illusions of independence. And that illusion, that's their safety blanket. It's not that they don't want love, right? They just want love without feeling. And that's pretty much impossible. So when things start getting real, when you show consistent affection like you think you're supposed to, or emotional depth, or offer them stability, they start to crumble internally. You'll see it in their eyes first, the hesitation, the guarded look, then the withdrawal begins. They'll tell you they're tired, busy, stressed, not in a good place mentally. They'll say they need space, they got to take care of some stuff, life's hectic. But what they really need is to calm the storm that love just woke up inside of them. Avoidants don't process emotion in real time. They compartmentalize it, seal it off until it leaks out later. In guilt, in regret, in random late night texts that say, hey, just thinking about you. But they never follow through, because following through means facing the very fear that built them. And here's the part that breaks you if you're an empath. They do miss you. They think about you when they're quiet. They replay the good moments, sometimes even more vividly than you do. But instead of reaching out to rebuild, they reminisce to relive guilt. Actually, sorry, to relieve guilt. Imagine to relive it. I guess they probably do that same time too. It's their way of keeping the memory alive without facing the person that they hurt. Sorry. I gotta sneeze. I can hold it. Sorry, I tried to pause this thing. Sorry, guys. Avoidants live in paradox. At least you know this isn't an AI voice, guys. As much as my voice changes over the time of this podcast, it's just as I'm doing this in the night, and as the night gets closer to 12, for some reason, my voice goes deeper and deeper. So I try to keep it constant, but it doesn't necessarily stay that way. Anyways, sorry. Avoidants live in paradox. They want love's comfort without its demands. They want intimacy without accountability. They want to be chosen without actually having to choose. And so they hover, not gone, but not truly present. They stay just close enough to keep you confused. You'll know an avoidance pattern by this simple rhythm. They'll show interest when you're distant. They'll withdraw when you're warm. They'll say, I miss you, when you finally stop waiting. And every time they sense you moving on, they'll find just enough words or gestures to reset your hope. It's a bugger, man. They don't do this out of cruelty, though. They do it out of fear. Because losing your attention means losing their emotional stability they borrow from you. You were their emotional anchor, even if they never admitted it. And so the avoidance logic isn't really logic at all. It's defense. A perfectly rehearsed system designed to protect their heart at all costs, even if that means destroying what could have healed it. When they push you away, they're not saying, I don't love you. They're saying, I don't trust love will keep me safe. When they ghost you, they're not declaring power. They're avoiding the shame of being vulnerable. And when they circle back months later, casually, soft, like nothing even happened, that's not closure, that's craving. That's loneliness disguised as curiosity. So what do when you love someone like that? You stop trying to speak to their wounds and start listening to your own. Because the more you try to decode them, the more you lose the part of yourself that already knows this isn't how love is supposed to feel. Listen, avoidance avoidant doesn't need your perfection. They need their own reckoning. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to step away and let life, not you, teach them what connection really costs. Because love isn't supposed to feel like waiting to be chosen. Love isn't supposed to feel like you're walking on emotional eggshells. Love is supposed to feel like peace, not tension disguised as chemistry. So when you finally stop trying to decode their silence and start honoring your own truth, that's when the real healing begins. The empath's awakening, reclaiming power without becoming cold, which is difficult because at some level, I'm sure you're upset. There comes a point, usually after the tears, the silence, the frustration, the struggle, the annoyance of the whole thing, and the waiting, when the empath realizes something quite quietly powerful. It was never about being loved back the same way. It was about learning that not everyone can meet you at the depth you offer. That realization hits like a clean, fresh air after a storm. You stop replaying what you said wrong, what you could have done differently, how you could have been better, or why they didn't choose you actually. Instead, you start seeing the pattern, not as a wound, but as a mirror showing you how much you've grown. Because healing from an avoidant isn't about becoming cold or colder. It's about becoming clearer. Empaths often fear losing their warmth. They say things like, I don't want to become hardened or I don't want to stop caring. But here's the truth. You can still love deeply without losing yourself in the process. You can have empathy without self-erasure. You can be gentle and still have actual boundaries. The awakening starts when you realize that distance doesn't always mean disconnection. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes silence is actually sacred. I keep saying actually, I don't know why. It's the moment you stop. I'm not reading everything, by the way, guys. It's the moment you stop explaining your worth to people who already know it because for whatever reason they don't value it. At the first shift, the real one happens when you stop trying to decode their absence and start understanding your own energy. Why are they gone? Stop trying to figure it out. You don't know. You're only you. You're not them. You begin to notice the way your body tightens when you chase peace instead of living it. You catch yourself checking your phone less. Yeah, that's right. You know, you're checking your phone. Look, did they text? Nope. Nope. It's by your head. Nobody. Nope. Nothing. Nope. That's your mom. Nope. That's your friend. You start noticing how calm feels foreign, but right. At first, it feels strange, right? Loving someone and not acting on it. You want to send them a message, right? To make it right, to remind them of, you know, your exit. But then a new voice appears inside, one that says, listen, bud, you've done enough. And for the first time, you actually listen. You don't owe them another text. Just because they sent their feelers out, it doesn't mean you have to respond. If anything, you're probably better off not if you want healing to start, if you want clarity and change to happen, a shift in their way of thinking and a shift in your life. You need them to realize on their own. You can bring them to the water, and your water, you brought them to the water. When you leave them at the water, they have to drink. If you try to feed them, then you're doing nothing but making everything just turn into that loop again. That's what awakening looks like for an empath. It's not loud. Hey guys, I quit. No, it's quiet. I'm not afraid anymore, like Kevin in Home Alone. No. It's not revenge. It's release. You don't need to prove they lost something special. You are special. Please know that. I know it's difficult and you don't feel special because they haven't treated you like you are, but you are special. They'll feel it when their peace never feels as warm again. As sad as that sounds. It's not exactly the notebook you were hoping for, right? But the goal isn't to make them regret. It's to stop you from relapsing into pain disguised as devotion. Because when you're in the orbit of an avoidant long enough, you start confusing anxiety with passion, uncertainty with chemistry, tension with importance. And that is not love. That's an addiction. Breaking that addiction means getting comfortable with your own company again. It means relearning what silence feels like when it's not waiting for a reply. It means building small, steady habits that remind you you're a whole person, not because someone returns energy, but because you never stopped having it in the first place. Empaths heal through purpose. You don't move on by forgetting. You probably won't. You move on by reinvesting your energy into you and into something else that gives back. Pouring your passion, your compassion back into something that deserves it. What you do, maybe there's a craft you do, your faith, your health, your friendships, your family. You stop trying to rescue others and start rebuilding your own foundation. And somewhere in the rebuilding, your sense of power returns. It doesn't come back all at once. It arrives in fragments. The first time you say no without guilt. The first time you don't explain why you're quiet. The first time you see them walk by and feel nothing. What peace. That's the moment you know you're free, when their presence doesn't pull on your nerves, on your nervous system anymore. You can still care, wish them well, but they no longer live rent-free in your emotional space anymore. And if you ever cross paths again, which life tends to make happen, you'll notice something different. You won't shrink this time. You won't scan their tone or their body language for clues. You'll listen, maybe even smile, but inside you'll know you've outgrown that dynamic. Empaths think healing means closure from the other person. It doesn't. It means realizing you don't need closure to be at peace. You were never crazy. You were just loving someone who wasn't emotionally equipped to hold on to it. That's not weakness. That's evidence of your capacity. And the next time you love, you'll do it differently. Not with less intensity, by the way, but with more discernment. You'll recognize red flags as lessons, not projects. You'll stop mistaking mixed signals for mystery. No, mixed signals are actual signals. Play that again 3 times. You'll stop pouring into people who confuse availability with attraction. The empath's awakening isn't the death of softness. It's the birth of wisdom. It's the strength to say, I can love you, but I won't lose myself by doing it. And that's the most magnetic energy of all, the kind that doesn't chase, doesn't prove, doesn't beg, it just is. Because when an empath finally reclaims their peace, they stop being a mirror for someone else and become a light for their own path. Although I would say to you that Jesus is the light, and the light is in the Word of God. I just want to put that in there, just being honest. And one day, far removed from confusion, the longing, the endless overthinking, you'll look back and realize that the ending wasn't punishment, it was a redirection. It was life saying, you've learned enough through pain, it's time to learn through peace. And that's the awakening. Not new you, the real you finally unhijacked. Emotional sobriety. When love stops being a high. There's a point after the storm, after the crying, the bargaining, the silence, where you start to feel something strange. It isn't joy, not yet. It isn't even closure. It's something quieter, something that doesn't demand attention and explanations. It's calm. That's emotional sobriety. It's the moment love stops being a high, when you stop craving the intensity, the chase, the validation, when you finally understand that peace doesn't mean boredom, it means safety. Most people don't realize this, but emotional addiction is real. When you love someone who gives you inconsistency, affection one day, silence the next, warmth today, cold tomorrow, your nervous system becomes hooked on the unpredictability. Every time, every text, every glance, every near touch becomes a small hit of dopamine. It's chemistry disguised as connection. And because empaths feel so deeply, that push-pull becomes intoxicating. You're not just addicted to the person, you're addicted to how they make you feel hope. The hope that this time they'll stay, this time they'll understand, this time they'll see. Well, we'll see. Because emotional sobriety starts when you stop chasing that high, when you realize that no one should make your nervous system feel like you're a slot machine or on a roller coaster, that you don't need the adrenaline of uncertainty to feel alive. For a while, that quiet feels unnatural. You'll catch yourself missing the chaos because it was good, felt good, right? But because it was familiar, the silence feels empty at first, like something's missing. But what's missing isn't them, it's the chemical rush your brain got used to. And that's when you start to detox, not from the person, but from the pattern. You begin to understand that your body's not just your heart not just your heart needs healing. You start eating better, sleeping deeper, thinking clearer. You'll stop waking up in panic, wondering what you did wrong, because you finally see that love doesn't require you to lose your emotional balance. When love is healthy, it doesn't spike and crash. It levels, it steadies, it gives more than it takes. And once you've known chaos, the steadiness feels revolutionary. You start recognizing that what you used to call chemistry was actually anxiety. What you used to call passion was emotional volatility. What you used to call attachment was survival. That's emotional sobriety, when you can tell the difference, when you can stop mistaking intensity for intimacy, when you stop confusing attention with affection, when you stop settling for breadcrumbs because you're finally full. The sober heart doesn't chase anymore. It observes. It trusts timing, It stops needing to prove its worth by holding on to someone who doesn't know how to receive love. You learn to sit in moments of discomfort without spiraling. You'll learn that someone else's silence isn't a reflection of your value. You learn to breathe through triggers, not to suppress them, but to outlast them. It's the same way recovering addicts learn to walk past what used to ruin them at first. It takes effort. Then it becomes natural again. And eventually, what used to destabilize you just doesn't register anymore. The late replies, the passive aggressive remarks, the emotional distance, they lose their power over you. They stop needing closure because you've built your own. That's when you start seeing the beauty of simplicity instead of love, in steady love. In mutual respect, in honest communication, you realize how rare consistency is in the world obsessed with drama. And you start craving peace instead of passion that burns through you. Emotional sobriety doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop bleeding for every feeling. You can still fall in love, but this time you'll fall with awareness. You know what's going on. You will be able to believe your eyes, but you'll be able to know what's going on at the same time, and you won't be falling. You'll recognize the signs of emotional unavailability before you sink into them. You'll know that someone's intensity on day one doesn't equate or equal commitment on the 10th day. You'll also know that love doesn't have to feel like a rescue. You don't have to be needed to be wanted. That someone choosing you isn't proof of your value. You are proof. And when someone new enters your life, you won't perform, you won't shrink to fit their comfort zone or over-explain your empathy. You'll listen to your body, not just your heart, because now your peace is sacred ground. You'll protect it like oxygen because it is. And it's what keeps you steady when life tests you again. Emotional sobriety doesn't promise a life without heartbreak, by the way. It promises a life where heartbreak doesn't destroy you. You'll still feel deeply, but you'll recover fast or faster. You'll learn the art of release. You'll start saying things like, I love you, but this isn't healthy. Wait, you'll start saying things like, I love you, but this isn't healthy, and mean it, actually. You'll walk away before collapsing. You'll see their patterns and choose not to participate in the madness. I added the madness, but I shouldn't have. But you won't participate because you'll see what's happening. You'll say, nope, not going into that pothole again. That's not coldness, that's mastery. Because the sober heart isn't numb, it's clear. It doesn't confuse love with longing. It doesn't confuse pain with proof. It knows the right connection doesn't drain, it sustains. So when people ask how you finally let go, you'll tell them truth. You didn't stop loving them, you stopped abandoning yourself. And that's the moment everything changes, because one taste of peace, chaos will never taste the same again. Let me just finish this up. I hope I can finish it in the next few minutes here. Let me just get this off here. Sorry, guys. All right. And breaking the cycle. Learning secure attachment after chaos. Once you've survived the chaos, once you've found calm, there's still one question that lingers quietly in the back of your mind. What now? You've detached you've healed, you've stopped chasing people that don't choose you. But what does love look like after all of this? How do you trust again when the very idea of connection feels like walking into fire you just escaped? That's where secure attachment begins. Not as some ideal that you chase, but as a daily practice. People often think secure attachment means you never get triggered again. That's not true. That you never worry, never crave, never doubt, but that's not true. It simply means you respond differently, you stop reacting from fear, and start acting out of awareness. The secure person still feels deeply. They just don't let those feelings control the story. They can say, I'm feeling anxious right now, without assuming it means the other person is leaving. They can say, I need reassurance without shame or manipulation. That's emotional security. It's not about being unshakable. It's about being self-regulating. When you've been through emotional chaos, especially with an avoidant partner, the healing can can't just stop at peace. You have to rebuild how you attach because the pattern will try to return. The brain remembers the thrill of the, volatility, the adrenaline of being almost loved. You'll meet people who feel familiar, and your body will mistake the familiarity for connection. It'll whisper, "This feels like home." But you'll know better now. You'll recognize that home used to mean emotional danger. So, how do you actually break the cycle? You start with three truths. You are responsible for your own regulation. No one else is coming to calm your heart for you. Love isn't rescue, it's reciprocity. You learn to breathe through discomfort instead of reaching for chaos. You can't heal what you continue to romanticize. If you keep glorifying the intensity, you'll never learn to value consistency. The person who made your heart race might not be the one who can help it rest. You attract what feels safe to your nervous system, not what's good for your soul. That's why you have to retrain both. And if you're looking at, I'm just saying, if you're looking at videos from past relationships or whatever they are, you gotta stop, and you might even have to delete stuff off of your phone so you kill the chance of being able to go back to it while you still have the desire to. That retraining doesn't happen overnight. It begins in small, quiet decisions. You choose people who are calm, even if they feel boring at first. You choose communication over assumption. You choose accountability over excuses. And slowly your body adjusts to peace like it's oxygen. It stops searching for crisis. It stops mistaking withdrawal for mystery. It learns that love doesn't have to hurt to feel real. And then when the right person arrives, you'll recognize them by how safe you feel, not how anxious. You'll notice that absence of drama at first. It'll feel strange, won't be exciting possibly. You might even think something's missing, but give it time. That stillness is what healthy love actually looks and sounds like. You'll also notice that you no longer rush to fill silence. You don't need to constantly constant contact to feel secure. You don't spiral when someone takes time for themselves because you've learned how to stay connected to you. The biggest transformation happens when you stop living in reaction to others and start living in alignment with yourself. Your peace stops depending on their moods. Your values stop being tied to their intentions or their attention. Your love stops being transaction. And that's what secure attachment really is. It's self-trust. It's knowing that whatever happens, you'll be able to handle it and you'll still have yourself. That if someone leaves, you won't collapse. That if love comes again, you'll let it in, but only if it respects your boundaries and you. You'll know you're healed when you stop needing to prove yourself and prove that you're healed. When you stop checking their page, when you stop crafting invisible arguments in your mind, when your quiet time finally feels peaceful and not lonely. And maybe one day you'll cross paths again with the one who broke you open. They might look the same, sound the same, even say the things you once wanted to hear, but this time you'll feel different. You'll listen without leaning in. You'll remember without relapsing. You'll see them as a part of your becoming, not your belonging. And that's when you finally understand the point of all this wasn't to make you bitter. It was to teach you discernment, to teach you difference between attachment and alignment, between being needed and being valued, between being chosen and being cherished. The empath who wasn't chased, sorry, the empath, I'm rushing this, sorry guys, for a specific reason I can't tell you. The empath who once chased love to feel seen, while now embody love to feel whole. Let me slow it down. They'll realize they were never too much. They were just with someone who couldn't meet them there. And that kind of realization changes everything. Because when you become secure, you stop chasing love that runs. You stop clinging to what confuses you. You stop interpreting inconsistency as proof you have to try harder. Instead, you move with grace away from what drains you toward what's grounding you. And the irony, the calm, secure energy, that peace you fought to build, that's what draws healthy people to you. Because emotional stability isn't boring, it's magnetic. It's the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't beg for connection. They actually embody it. So when the next chapter begins, and it will, you won't repeat the old story. You'll write a new one. One that doesn't start in chaos or end in confusion. One that's built on mutual effort, clear boundaries, and genuine peace. Because love isn't supposed to hurt. It's supposed to heal. And when you've learned that lesson the hard way, I guarantee you'll probably never forget it. So if you're listening to this right now, maybe still acting, maybe still aching, maybe still wondering why it had to end that way. Remember this. You're not healing to prove you're over them. You're healing to return to yourself. And that's the story worth living. Because once you stop chasing the wrong kind of love, you'll finally have room to receive the right kind. All right, guys. I hope this meant something. I hope you felt this. I honestly didn't want to, and I was trying to leave a little space for me to say something here because the file's getting long. I really just need you to understand that you are important. And maybe you don't feel that you've been treated that way. Maybe you haven't been treated like you're enough, and you haven't treated yourself like you're enough. Always trying to do more, trying to reach more, bend more. That's not the way. Anyhow, guys, if you know somebody who needs to listen to this, or maybe you need to listen to this again, I strongly encourage you. As I said, I tried not to make this a cookie cutter, what everybody else is offering on this avoidance. Avoidants are the devil. And empaths are the sweetest people ever. You know you got your own issues and you need to work on them as well, right? That's what this was all about. Hopefully you get and understand. I did repeat things in different ways, kind of like one of those multiple choice questions that sound the same as 15 questions before, but it's just to get you to kind of really live and hear and understand. And maybe one part meant a lot to you and one part didn't mean so much to you, but hopefully something hit. As I said, I'm not a professor of anything. This is my research. I didn't steal this from anywhere. But yeah, I mean, it's going to sound familiar to some people, probably other people who know what they're talking about too. No, I don't know. Anyhow, this has been a long one. As the Hodgkins would say, this was a dang good show. Anyhow, y'all, see you next time. This was episode 271. I hope you liked it. Take care, and I'll see you next time, okay? Peace out. Hey, come check out You Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 dogs. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while, understand that, listen, Sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, well, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.